These pictures haven't been seen for a long, long time, not since the end of apartheid. I asked him if I could take some pictures and go inside, and he sat down. That can of doom was above his head. It's an insecticide, but in this picture it adds a visual element of dark prophecy in a time when South Africa was at a crossroads in its history. I'm Steve Bloom. I grew up in South Africa during the mid-1970s. Apartheid signs were everywhere. They really did rule people's lives, and people didn't dare disobey them. You either had separate buses or separate seats in the buses. On the horizon there's the little line, and that's Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was at the time. And this seemed such an incongruous sight of the whites only sign on the beach and all these statues, all the white Buddhas and white Venus de Milos. An area called Sea Point in Cape Town, and they built a dog toilet. And there was a parade going by, and just happened to catch these people standing on the dog toilet watching the parade. And there were a lot of Western companies which were very much present during the years of apartheid. That was before sanctions really began to bite. This photograph is of a chap who looked like Idi Amin, the brutal dictator in Uganda at the time, and very much suited the agenda of a lot of white people who felt that Idi Amin's atrocities supported their argument for white rule. He was part of a parade, and people in the street looked at him and smiled and looked and saw the fake medals. Just trying to get a sense of people lost in their own worlds and deep in their own thoughts. One of the things about apartheid was it tended to engender a feeling of indifference across the colour line. And here we have some kids walking past a man who was with his sick partner. They picked up some ice cream and walked past in the opposite direction. Now, when you see the two pictures together, that says something about indifference, because you see that they don't notice them. And here we have a woman rather well dressed walking past them, and the man looks up from his sick partner, and the white of his eye just catches the light as he looks at the woman. Some children were tormenting a drunk woman in the street, and it was a rather horrible situation which I photographed. These women are Bergies. The word Bergie is derived from the Afrikaans, people of the mountain, because they, to a large extent, lived on the slopes of Table Mountain. They were very often meth drinkers, and their life expectancy was very short. But at that point, she'd actually collapsed because she'd been drinking methylated spirits. It was extremely dangerous. This is an aerial photograph of Crossroads, which was a large area of squatters. Black people who were working in the cities were not allowed to have their dependents living with them. The dependents were expected to live in homelands quite far away, but people were determined to live together in family units, so they built shanties illegally inside one of the shanties in Crossroads. People would sometimes come home at night and find their houses destroyed. Dependents had been rounded up and sent back to these homelands. A policeman jumping out of his car and chasing a black man at random. It was at the time of the Soweto uprising, after which the authorities had passed a law which stipulated that black children had to have their lessons in Afrikaans. Now, that wasn't their natural tongue, and what it meant was that by learning all their subjects in Afrikaans, they would have less of a chance of getting good grades. So a number of kids took to the streets, and the authorities cracked down ruthlessly. They'd killed people, adults and children, as the uprising grew, and the first real unstoppable cracks in apartheid started to appear. This is tear gas on the Grand Parade in Cape Town. There's this tremendous richness in the grain that you just don't get with digital photography nowadays. It was a farm worker's child. They didn't have any proper furniture or any decent furniture in the house. The farm workers were often very much exploited, subsistence wages. The children just didn't get decent education. I was at a carnival and I thought I'll photograph both the white and the black audience. Took this picture and this guy was looking at me rather suspiciously through his binoculars. Then I moved off and went and photographed the non-white audience, and I noticed that the little girl in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture, she was looking through a pair of pretend binoculars. The great thing about the power of photography is you can put these pictures up and you can transport people back and make them aware of what went on. The photographs really do bring people's memory into check and just remind them as to how we can perhaps improve the way we navigate through our lives.